Chainsaw Man is a story filled with devastating losses. It seems as though every single time that Denji seems to get close to somebody, they get taken from him in horrific fashion. Whether it was Nayuta's head being served on a plate, Power being banged by Makima, or Aki-47 showing up to Denji's front door, time and time again, whenever Denji lets somebody even remotely okay into his life, they're taken from him. In fact, even the evil people that Denji likes, like Makima, eventually have to die at his hands and then be eaten by him. Thus, we as readers have decided to not stay too close to anybody that gets too close to Denji, because getting close to Denji is the kiss of death, especially if you kiss Denji. I'm looking at you, Reze. And yet all this tragedy hasn't gotten the Chainsaw Man fandom down. The constant turnover of characters, the levity of the story, the comedic punchlines, and the delusional hope of all of the fans reading the story that the characters that we've lost are gonna come back eventually makes it so this story that should be incredibly depressing doesn't actually end up that way. However, those delusions that keep us Chainsaw Man readers happy may not be as delusional as we originally anticipated, because the events of the chapters of 190 to 192 have reignited the fire that Chainsaw Man theorists are using to try and explain that characters that we love that have been lost could come back to the story. See, not only did chapter 192 introduce the idea that characters like the Control Devil and the Blood Devil will almost certainly be coming back into the story, but chapter 189 and on, basically everything that's had to do with the two Mifunes, confirms in some capacity that cloning technology may exist in the Chainsaw Man universe. And if cloning technology exists in the Chainsaw Man universe, a lot of things are going to start to make sense, and a lot of things are going to need some explaining. See, because if we just take the events of chapter 189 on and use the existence of cloning technology and the fact that when the Death Devil descends down to the human realm, high-ranking devils will come to pay respect, that can mean a lot of things really quickly. Like the fact that the Chainsaw Man that we saw that wasn't Denji could possibly be a clone of Denji. The fact that the Nayuta head that we saw at the sushi restaurant could have been cut off a clone of Nayuta. And lastly, and most concretely, and definitely most importantly, when the Death Devil descends down to Earth as the final boss of Chainsaw Man, it'll be accompanied by the Control Devil and the Blood Devil. Assuming the Control Devil's in hell right now, so many things are up in the air, which is why now, with no further ado, we need to get directly into Power's Return Revealed in our chapter 192 review. But before we get to reviewing anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Listen, Fujimoto as a mangaka isn't a guy that confirms a lot of theories. There has been multiple lines cast early in this story that we have yet to reel in. Ideas like Power was the Blood Fiend, and therefore the Blood Devil, and she should have reincarnated in hell, which means at some point she'll come back. The fact that the head of Nayuta that we saw on a sushi plate didn't have her iconic mole under her eye. A fake and or different Chainsaw Man showing up that we know isn't Denji that's never gotten any explanation. Mifune walking into the building of all the government figures who are working with the aging devil and staring down at herself, sacrificing her heart to Yoshida and being like, wow, I'm sturdy, aren't I? We have so many lingering questions left in Chainsaw Man, and crazily enough, it feels as though the answer to those lingering questions is some of our most beloved characters are coming back. See, because while some would call what happened between chapter 189 and 192 uneventful, the aging devil was never supposed to be the main villain of part 2. The aging devil was supposed to fulfill a role comparable to that of the falling devil, a primal devil that shows up, shows off the ridiculous power that a primal devil has, to set the stage for the idea of how ridiculous it is that there is devils out there stronger than this. Because while we've never seen two primal devils go head to head, it's illustrated in chapter 192 that the Death Devil reigns above all other devils. And so devils like the aging devils that are seemingly unkillable through any regular means, being weaker than the Death Devil is absolutely wild. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, not a crazy amount happens between chapter 189 and 192. The aging devil, like I anticipated, is pulled into Denji's mouth and therefore into its own dimension, where its aging devil abilities don't work, and therefore it has to enter into a contract with the Public Safety Division, Denji and Asa, to never fight against them again. And then after that, we see all the people that were inside of the aging devil's dimension are now outside of it at a cafe, living their regular lives, which is living life inside of a decaying Tokyo that's slowly but surely hunting down fallen false chainsaw mans with roving packs of men with spears, and for some reason, Yoru seems to be fully in control of her Asa vessel. Let's say that we're getting a whole lot more Yoru than we are Asa nowadays. And as Yoru defeated Denji in combat, it now appears as though the War Devil thinks of Denji as a possession, and therefore should be able to turn him into a weapon whenever she wants. And that's important, because right now, she doesn't want to. Yoru is more focused on the fact that she wants to have fun with Denji than turn him into a weapon. And while this is absolutely a reflection of the feelings that Asa has for Denji more than anything, it's still an incredibly important tidbit of information because it might reflect the fact that when it comes down to it, Yoru may not actually be able to turn Denji into a weapon in the battle against the Death Devil. Because even though Yoru seems as though she's in charge right now, Asa is still in there influencing her subconsciously. However, all of this information pales into comparison into what I want to talk about today. I just wanted you to be kind of caught up on what's going on in Chainsaw Man. See, because the events of the most recent chapter seem as though to point towards the fact that the next thing that we're going to have to deal with in this story is the Death Devil. Now, while I've been hypothesizing the fact that the Death Devil is on the horizon for a while now, it feels as though right now the story has nothing left to do outside of introducing said Death Devil. Because while watching Denji and Yoru go out on a murderous date in chapter 192 was kind of cute and cool, unfortunately, unless we want to turn this into the most messed up slice of life manga of all time, you can only really stall for so much time until consequences get reintroduced. And the idea of those consequences got set up in chapter 192. See, because after Denji and Yoru frolic through the city with Yoru banging a bunch of people, and I don't mean the fun way. As Denji and Yoru sit out on a balcony and watch the city of Tokyo burn, Denji asks Yoru, "Where's the Fire Devil?" To which Yoru, the War Devil, and therefore an incredibly high-ranking devil, answers, "I don't know, but you'll be able to meet them when the Death Devil comes." Now, rather interestingly, the terminology that Yoru uses here is descends, and I find this really interestingly because ideologically, hell usually exists below the earth. Whether it be in the core of the earth or in just the dimension that exists below our earthly dimension, hell almost always exists under the earth. However, the way that Yoru talks about the Death Devil makes it seem as though the Death Devil is descending from a higher place. It could either imply that for some reason the Death Devil exists in some higher dimension, or that hell exists above earth. But for the moment, really, who's to say? Now, Yoru answers Denji's why with, when the Death Devil makes an appearance, all the high-ranking devils come to greet her. Now, that's interesting, because one, it seemingly seems to talk to a hierarchy of devils. The Death Devil exists at the top of, which makes sense because the fundament of all of our fears is the fact that it might kill us. And two, when Yoru says high-ranking devils, the highest-ranking devils we can think of are the four horsemen of the apocalypse and the primal devils. The primal devils seem to exist as entities unto their own. I'm not necessarily sure as to whether or not the aging devil, the darkness devil, and the falling devil will make an appearance to greet the Death Devil, but it seems fairly certain that some iteration of the four horsemen of the apocalypse will come to greet the Death Devil. And for those of you who don't remember, the four horsemen of the apocalypse devils are war, famine, control, and death. However, as it currently stands, the War Devil and the Famine Devil are plotting against the Death Devil, which leaves only one possible devil who would be allying with the Death Devil, and that would be the Control Devil. And as all four horsemen of the apocalypse are related and sisters, this would make kind of for a 2v2 sister fight. That is, if the Control Devil allies with the Death Devil. See, because when Denji hears about the high-ranking devils coming to greet the Death Devil, he asks Yoru if the Control Devil will be there as well. To which Yoru says, maybe, but it won't be the Control Devil that you know. Now, this is interesting because one, it seems to confirm that Nayuta is dead, and two, that the Control Devil that shows up won't know anything about Denji. And while, yes, absolutely, when a devil dies and returns to hell, all of the memories of its previous life are wiped, that didn't seem like it was particularly the case for when Makima turned into Nayuta eventually. See, as we know, Makima was an iteration of the Control Devil that existed on Earth. When she was later killed by Denji and then consumed by him, presumably the Control Devil went back down to hell. However, in a somewhat astoundingly little amount of time for a ridiculously powerful devil like the Control Devil, either the Control Devil was killed in hell and returned to Earth because of the reincarnation cycle, or found one of the doors between hell and the Earth dimensions and went through it to come back to Earth. However, regardless of how Nayuta got back to Earth, the important thing to recognize here is that Nayuta seemingly had some kind of preternatural attraction to Denji. Something brought Nayuta to Denji, and whether or not that was the memories of a previous life, we can't say. Now, you can obviously make the argument here that the only reason that Nayuta and Denji ended up together is because Kishibe brought Nayuta to Denji to raise as a family member, but there's absolutely moments where we realize that Nayuta always was going to gravitate towards Denji. However, Nayuta is now gone. Maybe. And therefore, if Nayuta was actually killed and her head actually was served on a sushi plate for Denji to look at, that would seem to imply that the Control Devil is back in hell and presumably waiting for the Death Devil to descend to come back to the Earthen Realm. However, what if Nayuta's not dead? See, we've talked at length about the fact that Nayuta is not dead. We examined the head that was served to Denji. We saw that Nayuta didn't have her iconic mold that's drawn every single time we ever see her, and therefore somehow, some way, this Nayuta head didn't actually belong to her. And while we didn't have an insane amount of evidence to substantiate that point, the existence of two Mifunes gives us a bit more evidence. See, because when we saw a second Mifune look down at a bleeding out Mifune who had lost her liver and her small intestine, I assumed that the second Mifune was simply a reflection of her consciousness. That would allow for her to hold a conversation of any sort whatsoever while she sacrificed her heart to Hirofumi. However, considering the fact that she sacrificed her heart to Hirofumi and is now walking around going to cafes and hanging out with Yoru and Denji, seems to imply that for some reason or another, there's two Mifunes. But why? Why would there be two Mifunes? Well, it boils down to two possible answers. Either devil powers, be they contracted, or just Mifune being a devil herself, or cloning. And unfortunately, in the Chainsaw Man universe, both of those are equally possible. Because, well, yes, it would make a lot of sense that this crazy ability ties itself back to devil abilities, because after all, this is the devil manga. Unfortunately, in Tatsuki Fujimoto IP, you can never truly know what's going on. And if Mifune was cloned, it wouldn't be the first time that we could have possibly seen a clone in this story. Because in chapter 111, it was confirmed in some capacity that there was another Chainsaw Man running around. And considering this is before the Chainsaw Man church contracted all the people that got married into the church to turn into fake Chainsaw Men, and the design of this Chainsaw Man as it held up the decapitated Fuko looked exactly like that of Denji in his Chainsaw Man form, chapter 111 seemed to show us that there was two Chainsaw Men running around Tokyo. And even now in chapter 192, more than 80 chapters later, we still don't have an explanation as to why this fake Chainsaw Man has shown up once or twice. However, the existence of two Mifune might explain why we have two Chainsaw Man, as this moment could absolutely illustrate to us the fact that there is cloning technology in Chainsaw Man so incredibly adept that you can make one-to-one clones out of the same personality, powers, and appearances. And as Denji has been bleeding all over Tokyo, pretty much any chance he gets, getting his genetic material wouldn't be that difficult. And since his literal heart is Pochita, any genetic material that he has is probably intertwined with Pochita's devil essence. So the fact that there's two Mifunes might explain why there's two Chainsaw Men. But if cloning technology is so adept that we can have multiples of characters, then there's also a solid possibility that the Public Safety Division cloned Nayuta before chopping her head off. But why would they do this, you ask? Well, would it make a whole lot of sense for the Public Safety Division to kill Nayuta, a friendly, weakened version of the Control Devil that they're able to capture at all? If any group of people should understand exactly how terrifying the power of the Control Devil is, it would be the Public Safety Division. See, Nayuta doesn't have a clause that every single time that she dies that a random citizen in Japan takes her place, and is also so incredibly inept with her Control Devil abilities that she's able to be captured by the Public Safety Division. Something they couldn't have dreamed of doing with Makima, who was able to fight against the Darkness Devil one-on-one. So if the Public Safety Division had this weakest ever version of the Control Devil that they were able to not only control, but also put away, why would they kill that Control Devil knowing damn well that the Control Devil is now going to reincarnate in hell at full power? Especially if the entire idea of this entire arc is that the Darkness Devil is going to descend. And if the Darkness Devil is going to descend, why would you send a sister of the Darkness Devil back to hell to descend with it? And so all of that is to say that I believe that it would be genuinely much more rational to clone Nayuta, cut off the head of that clone and serve that to Denji to elicit his Chainsaw Man transformation, as opposed to killing the most controllable version of the most dangerous thing that the Public Safety Division has ever interacted with. But then again, Fumiko Mifune could have a devil power that allows for her to make multiples of herself. She could have a contract with something like the Doppelganger Devil that allows for her to make one-to-one copies of herself in her dying moments. However, unfortunately, if that's the case, it doesn't explain the fake Saw Man, something that we're still years later waiting for an explanation for. The chapter continues with the conversation between Yoru and Denji, as Denji begins to explain to Yoru the promise that he made with power. The promise that he made that stated that he would look for the Blood Devil. Denji goes on to talk about how the Blood Devil's a huge jerk, but when he was hanging out with her, he tended to have fun. But because of what he just talked about with Yoru and how the fact that if he was to find the Control Devil, it wouldn't be the one that he knew, he talks about how even if he was to find the Blood Devil, they're already strangers. And while this might seem like a throwaway line, or Denji using a segue of talking about his time with power and comparing it to the time that he's now spending with Asa and Yoru, I believe this is Tatsuki Fujimoto planting some seedlings in our brains. See, it's already been established that when the Darkness Devil descends down to Earth, high-ranking devils come out from the woodworks to pay respects. And while the most likely of the visitors for the Death Devil are going to be her 3 sisters, Yoru very purposely just said high-ranking devils. While it could absolutely be argued that hemophobia isn't one of the biggest fears on Earth, I'd actually argue that it is one of the biggest fears on Earth. See, because, well, yes, some people love horror movies and love seeing tons of blood, like in The Cabin in the Woods. What we've learned about fears in the Chainsaw Man universe and how they relate to devils is that the concepts that they represent are fairly abstract. See, because, well, yes, you as a horror movie enjoyer might love it when somebody gets cut in half and there's tons of blood. However, if you were to receive a semi-fatal to fatal wound and you saw all of your blood leaving your body, you'd be afraid of your blood in that moment. And it's these kind of abstract ideations on the fears that revolve around devils that allows for what we would identify as some of the weaker devils to be kind of crazy strong. I enjoy guns. Tons of people enjoy guns. People love watching Rambo use huge guns to cut people in half. However, if a gun were to be pulled on you in the middle of the street, you'd be afraid of that gun. And because people are afraid of what guns can accomplish in those moments, the gun devil is one of the most powerful devils on Earth. And I believe the same thing applies to the Blood Devil, and therefore I believe there is a fairly high chance that when the Death Devil descends, one of the devils that's going to come to greet it will be the Blood Devil. And if you guys remember the promise that Denji made to Power as Power faded away into the blood in Denji's body that he would use in the final battle against Makima, was that when Denji sees the Blood Devil next, even though they'll be enemies, Denji has to turn that Blood Devil back into the old Power. And listen, even though Tatsuki Fujimoto loves to kick us while we're down, I do genuinely believe that Denji is going to be able to fulfill this promise. However, up until this moment, we haven't necessarily had a way in which Denji was going to do this. While there was always the possibility that Denji was going to turn into Chainsaw Man and hurtle himself into hell to find the Blood Devil, it now seems as though one of the bigger parts of the ending of this story is going to revolve around the Blood Devil being one of the devils that comes to Earth's surface to pay respects to the Death Devil. And as it's truly not Denji's battle in the battle against the Death Devil, as that's more Fami and Yoru's battle, I believe the ending of the story, or at least the ending of part 2, but I believe part 2 is going to be ending of the story, will revolve more around Denji's conflicts against the Death Devil and the Control Devil, in a callback to part 1 of this series. And thus, yes, I do genuinely believe that the events of chapter 189 to 192 have confirmed to us once and for all that Power is on her way back into the story. And if you want to get even crazier with it, I am not entirely sure that Nayuta was killed in the first place. And since the Public Safety Division's entire goal with Denji right now is to have Yoru turn him into a weapon, for all of you out there being like, oh, well, if Nayuta's alive, wouldn't they just tell Denji at this point? I mean, they've already accomplished all that they were trying to do, right? In terms of making him so mad that he turned into the Chainsaw Man. It's important to remember that the Public Safety Division, who's now kind of in charge of the Chainsaw Man church that they've dissolved, has no real reason to give Nayuta back to Denji because, like I said, they're just trying to turn him into a weapon for Yoru. So, are brighter days ahead for the Chainsaw Man fan base? I'd say so. To me, it feels as though an IP wrought with loss is about to be filled with a little bit of compassion for its MC, as I genuinely believe that this story will end with Denji having his little sister in Nayuta, his best friend in Power, and his girlfriend in Asa. Then again, who's to say? Do you guys believe that there's a legitimate chance that Power and Nayuta come back in the story, or am I just coping? Let me know in the comments below, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Oh yeah, and the chapter ends with Yoru sitting in Denji's lap. I don't know. They're probably gonna hook up again.